All right, have you had a chance to try out scooters yet in Tampa? That new way to get around town is still in the trial phase. Some things are going well, others maybe not so great. We're going to go in depth now with one of the board members of the Tampa Bay Mobility Alliance, Edward Reyes. Good to have you with us, Edward.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. First of all, we've had folks on with the Tampa Bay Mobility Alliance before, but just tell us about what the vision of that is, what exactly it's there for.
Well, the biggest thing is to help reduce human error and traffic violence, because there's so much growth that are happening in our society, and there's a lot of incidents and people are being injured. So the biggest thing is to facilitate or to have a society that we have less fatalities and or no fatalities. That's the idea of the Vision Zero, or reduce human error as much as possible.
And we are unfortunately an area where we haven't been as pedestrian and bicycle friendly as we need to be. We know every year we see those statistics, and that's why Vision Zero was formed to protect folks who want to get out and walk. And now scooters you add to the mix. Let's see, the city has logged about 600,000 trips since the test program began for scooters, and that's just one piece of transportation and new ways to get around and walking and riding your bike. But when you add in scooters, you're an attorney, have you had folks who have had issues with these scooters, have been injured or had problems? Yes, actually,
Because scooters are so new to our society and they're popping up everywhere, drivers are not used to having scooters on the road. For one. And to think about it, there were already lots of accidents that were happening before the pedestrian boom that's happening right now, because people were still crashing into cars, now they're crashing into people, because they're still running crosswalks, they're still making left turns without paying attention, they're still looking down on their phones. There's still a lot of issues. The difference is that now, instead of it being a car, it's a person, and the damages are more significant. Yes, and we have had a lot of incidents with scooter-related accidents or violence, and also pedestrians as well.
If you're on a scooter, are you considered a pedestrian or are you considered a motorist?
You're still considered to be a pedestrian, because you do not need a license to have a scooter, and you don't even have to have insurance to have a scooter, because you can pick one up, Uber, Lyft, or the new ones that are Lime, all the new scooters that are coming up. You can just pay and ride.
Use your phone and hop on. I admit I've never done it.
It's pretty fun though.
My thing. You like it?
Yeah, it's pretty fun. Especially when the battery dies, because you got to walk. Wow. But yeah, so the idea is that you don't have to have insurance, but there's a double edge to that sword as well, because not having insurance, if you are injured, you may not be covered if by medical coverages or anything. Right. But the flip note to that is that if you live in a household that has insurance, either yourself, your own auto insurance, or you live in a household that somebody has auto insurance, you may fall under that person's policy or your own auto insurance policy, if you have it. If you do not live in a household that has nobody that has insurance, and then the person that crashed into you, you'll take on their personal injury protection for their insurance, and you'll be covered for medical coverages like that.
So you're covered through your auto insurance, even though you're considered a pedestrian. That's interesting.
Exactly, unless there's a rider that separates that when you buy your policy. But up to now, right now, you're covered through your auto insurance.
Now, one of the problems that they've had that they're going to work out through this pilot program, or are trying to, is there are certain areas you're not supposed to go, like the Riverwalk, places that are crowded, and you don't want to, have scooters there, and people are unfortunately still going into those areas, so that's something to work out. So if you get into an accident where you've gone somewhere you weren't supposed to go with a scooter, do you have extra liability because of that?
Well, it depends, because let's say the Riverwalk, for example, there's no cars that are riding through Riverwalk. Typically, people are walking.
Right.
So if you're going to get hit, you're probably the person that hits the person walking.
You're hitting a pedestrian.
You're hitting a pedestrian, on the scooter. So the liability will be personal liability, so they can sue you directly. That individual can sue you as a person if they choose to do that. It depends on the injuries as well. So that gets a little bit dicey, because I haven't seen so far your auto insurance pick up the tab on scooter incidents, because it's not a covered vehicle under their policy, whereas your auto is a covered vehicle under the policy. So I think that the insurance companies are, it's going to be a fun game. you know.
Yeah, it's
pretty
just a new element that's, you know, they got to catch up to how
Yeah.
we're going to handle these things. I want to just step back from scooters and just take a
Sure.
larger overview look
course.
at transportation and mobility, as your board does in Tampa. We want to be more pedestrian friendly. We want more sidewalks. We want less cars on the road. We know that's not happening. But what is the overall game plan to try and cut down on those, you know, those deaths from pedestrians and cyclists and all the problems we've had in the past?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that can be implemented, and I think Vision Zero does a great job. Tampa Mobility does a great job. I know myself as an attorney through the firm, I do a lot of education on this subject as well, is create some sort of, as far as the city goes or the local government, make the intersections or the crosswalks more visible, more lights, something that can really call your attention. And I was speaking to somebody just today, in fact, and the idea also was if they can create, like even your phone, when your GPS, whatever the case is, as you're approaching a busy intersection, intersection, there's a lot of, you know, because law enforcement knows everything that's going on because they've done a lot of data. So you know the dangerous intersections where there's the most traffic violence. So it would be interesting to see that there's an app that says, slow down, there's an intersection or a crosswalk, because most incidents happen at the crosswalks and at the red lights by left turns or people running the lights. Typically, a pedestrian, they're not walking across the street in the middle of just the road. They're not walking across the street in Delmarva just because.
If you've lived here long enough, we have all seen those lighted crosswalks that you
Yes.
think that drivers would pay attention to, and some people just don't. They just go right through them, and it's like, oh my gosh, you know, you're
Yeah.
doing everything right as the pedestrian, and still getting folks to look up from their phone.
Of course.
Or slow down or pay attention.
Well, I think the phone idea would be, if that could be implemented, something like that, it would be interesting because if they're looking at their phone, they'll say, you know, look up.
Yeah, right.
Right? Stop paying attention. There's a crosswalk or whatever. And I think if they start implementing like double speed fines, triple speed fines, people start saying, wow, if I get stopped here for speeding, my tickets go up. My ticket goes much higher. So then now you have a repercussion. So then what happens that, God forbid you don't hit nobody, but you get caught driving and you're speeding. And law enforcement, or they send you a ticket or whatever the case is, now you say to yourself, every time on this intersection, I can get a ticket, so I slow down. So I think that could also help too, because there's
Ways to disrupt behavior, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you have to break bad habits, right? And we have bad habits. I mean, it happens all the time because life happens. You got social media, you got this, you got that. Everything pops up on your phone. And it's hard not to want to look down.
And in just 1 second is
1
all
second.
it takes. So keep working at it. We appreciate having you, Edward. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much.